repetitive revision is an important part of every preparation. Most of the toppers said that they revise the syllabus 8 to 10 times before the final examinations. But the syllabus of most of the competitive examination is very wide and very deep, be it in organic chemistry or biology or general studies in UPSC or current affairs. The syllabus, it seems that the syllabus doesn't have any boundaries. So it makes note taking an important part of every preparation. And that is what I'm going to talk about today. Today I'm going to discuss with you 10 tips to make notes like toppers. Stay tuned as I'm going to share note making secrets which you would not have heard before. Hello friends, this is Avinash Agarwal, your success guide in the journey of scoring more marks, cracking exams and achieving your goals. And the topic of today's session is how to make notes like toppers. Note taking is not only important for revision, but it has a very important role to play in learning also. In fact, international research says that a good note taking helps in improving the overall learning of a student also. So whenever you're sitting in the class and you're taking notes, let's see what actually happens. You are actively listening to what the teacher is saying. After listening, you are understanding and comprehending what is being said. You're trying to convert whatever you have understood in your own language, and you are trying to put it down in the terms of notes. So actually, if in a way you see, it is complete 360 degrees, right from listening to understanding, comprehending, changing it in your own words and writing. So it's complete learning which is happening. So what I'm trying to emphasize over here is that note taking, yes, is a very important part of making an effective and fast revision. But apart from revision, note taking plays a very, very important role in the overall learning process of a student. Now, without much ado, let's talk about 10 tips. Let's talk about 10 tips to make notes like topper. So the first tip is focus on understanding. What it means is that whenever you're taking notes, the first priority should be on understanding and comprehending whatever the teacher is saying. Why I'm saying so is that because I've seen a lot of students, what they do is that they close their mind, they stop listening to the teacher and just blindly write what is being written on the blackboard. So do not make notes. At the cost of understanding and active participation. Understanding and actively participating in the class is priority number one. It should be followed on by note taking, and don't make blind notes without understanding. Those notes are of no use. I see a lot of students, they make very clean and fancy looking notes, but if you ask them what does it mean, they are simply blank and they say that I don't know because I was busy note taking. So the first tip was focus on understanding. The second tip is watch out what the toppers are asking, especially questions. Most of the toppers said that they keep an eye or they keep a continuous watch on what are the kind of questions which are asked by fellow students and fellow colleagues, or especially the students whom they think are more intelligent they are. At sometimes one of the students said that sometimes he doesn't even understand the relevance and the importance or the context of the question asked by the class topper, but he simply writes down the question in the notes. And he would go down, when he spent some time in the self-study, he would try to understand what was the meaning of the question. What I'm trying to say is that some of the toppers or some of the students are God-gifted, and they might ask some questions in the class which you would not be immediately able to understand and appreciate how that question is related to the concept. But please keep a watch on these boys and girls whom you think are as intelligent or probably more intelligent you are. The third tip of note taking is that use acronyms. Use acronyms as much as possible. Since I work as a JEE NEET mentor, and since I do a lot of counseling for students preparing for different competitive examination, one question which comes up very frequently to me was that how do you sharpen your problem solving skills? Now, initially it's a 5-step process. Initially, I used to explain the steps. But recently what I've done is that I have developed an acronym for that, which is BDFRP. So if somebody would ask me, how do you sharpen problem solving skills? I say that you can sharpen your problem solving skills with a technique which is called BDFRP, where in each character, B stands for background of the concepts, D stands for derivation, F stands for formula, R stands for revise the concept, reproduce the concept in your own words, and P stands for practicing the questions based on that concept. So you can develop similar kind of acronyms. These kind of acronyms will help you in understanding things better and faster. The fourth tip which most of the toppers do is that develop your own notations. Notations are extremely important in note taking. Notations means like if you think that there is a concept which needs to be revised again, you can put up a notation of RA. If there is a very tricky question or very good question, you can say FQ, Fadu question, PA, Pakka Aega, MIQ, most important question, MIC, most important concept. What I'm trying to essentially tell you is that you should develop your own notations and use them extensively in your entire note making. These kind of notations would help you not only in learning but also revising, not only in learning but also in revising the syllabus faster and better. The fifth tip is that whenever you have made notes and you are revising those notes in the house, there are two things which you should do. While you are doing the first revision and you find out that there are certain things which there are certain things which are very important and they need to be revised again and again, or there are certain additional notes which you want to put up, you should draw a white line on the bottom of the page. See, there are two blank spaces on the page. One is the bottom of the page and one is the top of the page. Some of the students in a very light manner say them छत के नीचे and छत के ऊपर also. But what you should do is that whenever you're doing home study using your notes, and if you find that there is something important which needs to be written down, or there is an additional information which has to be mentioned over here, you can draw a line below of the page and you can write down most important things. So the contents which are written below the page are the content which needs to be revised again, or are the content which are the most important content after the first revision. Similarly, when you are revising again, and if you still find out there are some things which are extremely important and which you need to focus upon, you can draw a line on the top of the page and you can write those things on the top of the page. Another thing which most of the toppers do and advise is that they say that note making is a continuous process. Note making is not a one-day process or one class process or one chapter process. So whenever you're making notes of a chapter, you should ideally leave 2 to 3 pages blank after that particular chapter. The idea is that all through your preparation, you would come up with a lot of new and additional information on that chapter, on those concepts. So writing them somewhere else, what makes more sense is that if you have left some pages, 2-3 pages after the notes of that particular chapter are over, you can immediately write them. You can use those additional pages to write down additional information or additional concepts or additional questions which you come across during your preparation. The seventh tip, which I feel is very important and what most of the toppers said that day, when the class is over, they spend 4 or 5 minutes in completing the notes. So the idea is that when you are actively participating in the class, when you are listening to the teacher, comprehending, converting it in your own words and writing down, at times what happens is that there are some of the things which are still moving in your mind and you have not been able to write them down on the notes. So what is advised is that, whenever the class ends, do not rush out of the class or do not start speaking to your friends. Spend 4 or 5 minutes in completing the notes, whatever were the important things. If you can recollect of something which you missed out or which you could not make note of, or there is something left which is still there in your mind. So the idea is that there are a lot of things which you would not be able to make note while the teacher is teaching. So all those things are fresh in your mind, and if you can spend 2, 3, 4 minutes immediately after the class in completing your notes, you can do that very quickly. Otherwise, if you try doing them when you go back to the home and you're trying to do self-study, there are chances that you might miss all those things, or those things might get erased from your mind. So the 5 minutes will do a job of 15-20 minutes if you can actively use those 5 minutes and complete the notes of that class before you go out of the class or before you start speaking to your friends. Eighth tip, which most of the toppers said, that before every class they used to revise their notes for 5 minutes. So the idea is that when you're sitting in a class, when one class is over, next class is going to start, or when you're waiting for the teacher, you can quickly browse through the notes which you have made for the last class. If there is something which is missing out, if there is some clarification, if there is some important thing which you're not clear about, you should ask the teacher before he starts taking the class. And if everything is clear, and if you quickly revise whatever was discussed in the last class, you are ready to take your learning to the next level, because you can immediately, the contents of the last class are fresh in your mind, and when the teacher is teaching you the contents of the next class, it immediately takes your learning to the next level. So what I'm trying to say is that 5 minutes after the class and 5 minutes before the class starts, these are 5 minutes. These are only 10 minutes, but these 10 minutes have the power, these 10 minutes have the capability to take your learning to a different level altogether. The ninth tip which I want to say, and which most of the toppers said, that in some of the classes, what happens is that you are not able to understand some of the things. There are some doubts which remain unresolved. There are some things which are not clear to you. There are some things which you have not been able to understand clearly and have little bit of confusion. So you should use a special remark like C remark or revise again kind of a remark, and you should keep on making remarks on your notes so that you can study them deeply and revise them properly, and all the concepts are clear to you. So the idea, what I'm trying to emphasize over here, is that note taking, again and again, which I'm trying to say, is that yes, note taking is an important part of making revision process. faster and easier. But more than that, note taking is a very important, note taking plays a very, very important role in taking your learning to the next level. So the objective of the notes is not only revision, but also to improve the learning. And in order to improve the learning, if there are any gaps, if there is anything which you have not been able to understand, you should immediately make a remark and get back to, and whenever you're doing self-study, you should first of all clear all those doubts by going deep into the concepts. The 10th tip which I wanted to state over here is that most of the toppers said that whenever the notes of a chapter are over, what they do is that they write 3 important questions from that notes, or 3 important questions, or 5 important questions from that chapter, which can be probably asked, which can be probably asked by an examiner. So this, helps you in revising the entire notes. This puts you from the context of an examiner. This also, makes you think, just like an examiner, or what is going on there, what is going in the mind of the examiner. So these were the 10 tips. I'm sure you must have found, a lot of value in it. But the truth is that more than listening and understanding, the real value lies in implementing them. And if you are able to implement even 4 or 5 of these tips religiously and sincerely in your preparation, these tips have the power and the capability to take your revision, to take your learning to the next level. Apart from this, there are certain other miscellaneous tips which I want to give you. You can make mind maps. Mind maps are really helpful in making the revision process faster, because the way we make a mind map mimics the way in which the brain thinks. It is advised that whenever you're making notes, you should take big long side register. Do not take short registers, because note taking, revision, when you're revising with the help of notes, the mind also takes a photographic image of whatever is written on the notes. So if bigger the size of the notebook, the bigger would be the image, and the faster and better would be the learning. You can use colored pencils, you can use color markers. Whatever you find is important in the notes, you can put it in a box with the help of a marker. There are a lot of students who prefer digital notes, because in digital notes it is easy to add and delete if you want to add some note, or if you want to delete some portion of the note. But what I still suggest, and what I have seen most of the toppers doing, is that they prefer to use and make notes on their physical registers. Another important thing which I want to highlight over here is that update notes frequently, and make cross references as much as possible. Mark whenever you discuss that the concept is related to another concept or another content. One of the UPSC toppers said that note making was the central warehouse of his entire preparation. He said that whenever he was reading any current affairs or the current news, he always used to connect it with his notes. And if in case he was not able to do it, he would either analyze that news in detail, or he would either study the notes in details. And by studying in details, he would slowly try to evolve steps so that his notes are connected to whatever is the current topic which he is trying to study. So what I'm trying to say is that what he was actually trying to say is that it is that curiosity. It is that curiosity to connect what you are studying with your notes, and that is the way you take your notes. That is the way you make your notes more and more powerful every day. And when you do that, you not only make your notes powerful, but you also take your learning to the next level. Thank you. Bye-bye.